Hi everyone, it's Professor Diffley. This is History 100. This is the lecture video 2 for Chapter 1. So again, this is Chapter 1, Lecture Video 2. We start here with the origins of humanity. So in this, let's look at where humans start, or some of the names. Like I said, we're not going to go into the deep evolutionary biology history here. But instead, we're going to talk about the first, what we call humans, the Homo sapiens, right? The wise human beings. Their brains and appearance were similar, although not identical to ours, right? That's in the archaeological records where we start talking about them. So what are we then? We are Homo sapiens sapiens. This is the scientific Latin name for early humans who are identical to what we are today, right? It means wise humans. So this is their brains and appearance are identical to what we are today, in the way we function. And so where did human beings start? Well, the prevailing theory is out. One, what do we mean by a theory when we're talking about here? All the available evidence supports this claim, right? This is where, and what we're talking about is where did humans begin? Where do you find the first Homo sapiens sapiens? In Africa, as early as at least 200,000 years ago. Why that is where we found the first remains, right? The archaeological record. So, what would happen if, say, tomorrow, or, anytime we found earlier skeletal remains in China than the ones we found in Africa? Then we'd have to change the theory. Scientists never always use and caution with a theory that not everything can be fully known, right? This is all the available evidence, right? Here, it's the all of the evidence points to this, but nothing is ever certain, is the way they look at it, right? You could always find new information and that to change things. But here, what we have today, the first, based on all the evidence, is humans began in Africa and then began to spread from there all around the world. Some more definitional stuff here, early stuff. Culture, you hear these terms a lot. So what is culture? Culture is learned behavior. This is the way of life of a group of people, right? These are behaviors, values, symbols, and then are passed on from one generation to the next. What we're talking about here is, again, they are learned, right? So you learn your culture. You're not born with any specific. You may be born into a culture, but then you learn the traditions of that culture. This also suggests we can change culture, right? We can learn to live like another culture. That's the idea. Some behaviors, values, right? These are things that are taught and handed down from one generation to the next, right? From parents, grandparents, down, that sort of thing, from elders there. Symbols, what are we talking about symbols here? Here's just an example. If you grew up in the United States, I show you a picture of a bald eagle. Most people, when I say, what does that represent? They're going to say the U.S., right? America. It's a national bird. It's a symbol, right? But if you teach someone, you show that same bird to someone else on the other side of the planet, they might not think the same thing, right? They're going to associate it with, they're just going to say a bird. They're going to associate it with something they know, right? So these are symbols, right? It's because they have a meaning to those people in that place, right? And it is learned. So culture, again, is totality of one's learned experience, and it's transmitted socially to others. Again, it's symbolic. And they're passed on deliberately, right, and perpetuated throughout society for everyone. So again, and this is you use the thing is, symbols we use today to say the United States, your own religion, or even are recognizable to members of that group, but maybe not to others, right? So. Just different things you might do. Take a yarmulke, take different wearing a cross, different clothing or outward appearances, that sort of thing. These are some symbols, right? Use the bald eagle one I used before as well. So that's a culture. It's your learned behavior. So what is a society then? Basic definition is any group of interacting organisms, right? And this means anything, right? Anything can have a society. Ants have a society. Bees have a society, right? They all interact. They have their roles, that sort of thing. When we're talking about humans, we're talking about groups of people who directly or indirectly interact with each other, right? This is a society. So think of, societies can be as big as a small area, size of a country, right? It's all these groups working together. They usually view their society as different and distinct from others, because of its shared traditions and expectations. So societies are different, and they are often shaped by culture. and that's the thing. So really, it's a group of people interacting either directly or indirectly with each other is what a society is. So other terms here: polytheism, monotheism, religion terms. Polytheism is a belief in and worship of multiple gods, right? So this is very different. In the United States, we have a very religious diversity, right? We have lots of different religions. What polytheism is different. That's not what it's talking about. Polytheism is one religion where there are multiple gods. So this is not compatible with Christianity, Judaism, Islam, right? Where there's one God. Most of the world, until relatively recently in the in the grand scheme of things, was polytheistic, right? There's a god for everything, right? Every natural phenomena has a god, a deity associated with it. So that's what polytheism is: a belief in and worship of multiple gods, all within the same system, right? So think the ancient Greek pantheon, Norse, Roman, that sort of thing. Again, the modern religions that we have, the big three, don't have this. They are monotheist, right? So this is where there's a belief in and worship of only one God: Judaism, Christianity, Islam, or the ones we're talking there. So again, polytheism is belief in multiple gods. Monotheism is belief in one God. So it's about how many deities are there. Other definitions here: political states. This is, think of a political state as a country, right? In the United States, we use it a little differently, right? We talk of New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, that sort of thing. Here we're talking about countries. So what are political states? The U.S., Canada, Mexico, name three, right? Our neighbors there. Any country, that's a political state. They live in a defined territory. It's got, borders, boundaries. There's a system of government with leaders, judges, all that sort of thing. That is a political state, right? So England, France, separate political states. Now, what we're going to find as we go back into the world, especially through the Greeks, is city-states. And these are different than what we have today. Think of a city-state. Here's the definition, right? An urban center exercising political and economic control over surrounding countryside. So what that means, right? You have a city area where everybody lives, and then you have the area around it, right? For the farming, that sort of thing. The city-state, think of each city as a separate country. The city and the surrounding area, the area surrounding it as a separate country. So imagine this: Springfield and Holyoke. They would be, if they were city-states, two separate countries, right? They would have different governments, completely not part of the largest state of Massachusetts, not part of the larger government, country of the U.S. They would be separate. Why did you have city-states back then? You see this in ancient Mesopotamia, the ancient Greeks. You'll even see this in medieval Italy, like think Florence, Venice, that sort of thing. Genoa. Why back then? It was easier to control. Things were local, right? You didn't have the communication or transportation abilities we do later, and so it can only be a small area. And usually, again, everything was local. So you would have your bond first, your identity with your city. And that's where you'd be. And so that would be a city-state. There are very, very few left today. Vatican City would be one. Singapore would be another of what are essentially city-states that are left. Very few. Hong Kong could have been one for a while, but now it's part of China. Before it was part of the British Empire, but it was essentially a city that governed itself, right? So really today, the only ones left: Singapore, Vatican City in Italy, the home of the Pope, the head of the Catholic Church. So more going forward here. So the Stone Ages, so just some more overview terms here. Paleolithic age means, Paleolithic meaning Old Stone Age. This is from about 200,000 BCE to 10,000 BCE, which is where you get great change in humanity. That's why we cut it off at 10,000 BCE. This is all prehistory era. And this is, you had early human societies, hunter-gatherers, which we'll look at. Then what you get is Neolithic age, right? So Neo meaning new. So this is the New Stone Age from about 10,000 BCE. So BCE is before the current era. 10,000 to 4,000 BCE is the Neolithic Age, the New Stone Age. So Stone Age is broken up into two, old and new. Why? Neolithic Revolution. This is one of the required videos has this as the agricultural revolution. Definition, textbook definition: Neolithic Revolution, the invention of agriculture, domestication of animals, and the consequent changes in human society that occurred starting around 10,000 to 8,000 BCE in what is the Near East. Near East, we're talking about, goes as far north as Anatolia, which is modern-day Turkey, but this is the Middle East. Near East is really the Middle East. That's what we're talking about here. Think Iraq, think Syria, Lebanon, those areas around there is where you're going to have the Neolithic Revolution, right? So you start to get people growing food, agriculture, domesticating animals, farm animals, for food and for other sources, and the changes, right? So what are the changes? They're no longer hunter-gatherers. They're going to start to settle and settle permanently, become more sedentary, right? If you're going to plant food, you can't be moving around all year. You're going to have to stay near your crops, right? So that's what we mean about the Neolithic Revolution. And this is the first step towards civilization. So let's look going forward here. Some more. So who were the hunter-gatherers? Hunter-gatherers really, again, they're Paleolithic, Stone Age, Old Stone Age peoples. So what were their way of life and key characteristics? So what was it like to be to one of these people? So hunter-gatherers are any humans that hunt and roam for food, right? They gather food in the wild and they hunt animals, right? There's no permanent settled communities. They tend to be nomadic, moving around. Following the food sources, the animals. They could also be semi-nomadic. You often had that. The Native Americans in this part of Springfield, Massachusetts, what is now Massachusetts, Connecticut River Valley, were largely semi-nomadic, right? They would move around the valley, up and down the valley, different times of the year, following herds, following what's growing, following the weather, that sort of thing. But that's what hunter-gatherers. They, they roam, they find whatever they find, catch or find, kill. That's what they have for food. So they're always moving. So key characteristics, these are about bands of 25 people, sometimes more, up to 50, but usually around 20 to 25 people. How do we know that? Well, we see hunter-gatherer groups today. They often roamed in groups this size. And from the encampments that they left, we could tell there was about that many people at these camps. Diet and lifestyle, they're actually much more physically fit than when people start to settle down and have agriculture. Why? They're moving around all the time, right? That's part of it. They're always on the move. Their diet is also really varied, right? You eat what you find. So they find all sorts of things: nuts, berries, beans, vegetables, animals, fish. That fish was a big one for hunters, right? Because unlike some animals, it can't eat you, right? We're not talking about fishing for sharks here. Regular fish you're gonna catch to eat. Broadly, it can't kill you. But the other thing too, once you just settle down, say you grow wheat, guess what you eat? Wheat, that's it, right? So there's no variety, that sort of thing. The other thing, why are they healthier? Once we started settling with animals, we started to get sicker. Not only because we were more sedentary and didn't eat as a variety, but lots of animal diseases cross over, right? And we've seen that many, many times before, from different types of flu, bird flu, SARS, swine flu, all sorts of things, often transfer over from animals. They jump the animal's barrier, the species barrier there. Other things, group dynamics, these were largely egalitarian. What that means is there's no hierarchy. There's no, top and bottom. Everybody's equally the same, roughly equal, right? Of course, some people are better, are more well-respected. It might be, more well-respected. Those people who usually, who brought in more food, so this could be women who are usually the gatherers, men were the hunters. Why are men hunters and women gatherers? Really, it had to do with child raising, right? It's really hard to hunt effectively if you're carrying around a infant or a toddler, right? You're gonna have to stay close to the camp. But food, gathering is a much more reliable source of food, that sort of thing. So people who brought in more food probably going to be more respected because they create more for the community, for the group. Elders always respected. Why? They've lived through it all, right? They've seen more, so they have knowledge, wisdom, that sort of thing. But generally, everybody, gets the equal say, right? There's not one, like a dictator or a leader, a king or something like that. You don't get that until later. Trade, they traded with others when they ran into groups, right? What would they trade? Sometimes goods they needed, but most often trinkets, right? Different artistic value, the jewelry, that sort of thing, beads, that sort of thing. Technology, innovation. Their biggest tech was stone tools, right? That's the Stone Age. Their biggest innovation, control of fire, right? Why? Because you can use fire to cook, to clear underbrush, to protect yourself, warmth, that sort of thing. Religion or belief in afterlife, they seem to have a belief in the afterlife. Why? Well, we find their dead are buried with weapons and tools and food and other goods, which seems to suggest there's a life after death, that sort of thing. Buried with weapons, those things there. They also have a belief in religion. That's what we're going to look at starting in the next video.